Alright, welcome back to Legends of Dice, episode 6. In case you still don't know me, I'm Kylar. I'm joined by the ever insightful Xeriana.
I
And,
am insightful.
yes, sometimes, maybe. Who knows? You'll have to watch and be the judge for yourself. Today, it's been slow news going because holiday season's kicking in, so apparently nobody has any news. They're just all, like, burrowing into their holes of waiting winter. So we don't have news. But we do have highlights from the table. And then we have our main topic today. We are talking about creating NPCs. I think we handle NPC creation a little bit differently. If we had Kyrath on, he'd do it even more differently. So there are many different ways to create NPCs. We're going to tell you how we create NPCs. It's going to be fun. All right, so without further ado, it is time to skip right to highlights from the table. I don't know what Zeri's highlight is because she didn't write one down. So,
It's because
what's your
Zary didn't
highlight,
even
Zeri?
know. Can I just say like all of it? Like all of the session was great. But I
That
probably need to be
sounds
more specific.
cheating, and no one will know what you're talking about unless you use specifics. So the juries might take a while to deliberate, but I'm just going to tell you they can come back and say no.
Okay. Well, then if I had to pick one, I probably enjoyed the conversation that Lexa and Shiloh had. And also, I found it to be very excellently timed because it tied into something that happened later on in the session when they started talking about clones. And so there was a thing in my brain that triggered, like, maybe Lexa can now. She's like, so I don't know if anyone, I'm sure, I think you picked up on it, but I don't think anyone else did. In that, like, um, human, like organic beings can be programmed, and like I think it was a perfect because we had that talk with Shiloh, and she was like not certain whether she really believed what Shiloh said, and then that happened, and I was like, I think my character's growth. It's happening. She's discovered something, and so that was, I really liked that conversation, and the fact that um it later played into things that would happen on later in the night, and also kind of, I don't know, it bonded our characters together, which is something I've been really trying to strive for because I really like the idea of Lexa and Shiloh being friends. But we just, crazy things happen, and so it just hasn't really happened. And so, yeah, I liked that was probably my favorite part of the whole session.
It was great because the story did all of Radix work for him. Because he's been trying to do it and it has not been going very well. It's like, oh, Shiloh can talk, and then there can be clones. And oh, look, Lexa has her own epiphany moment later. Yeah, I really like that whole thing that happened. I'm not sure if anybody picked up on the reactions that Lexa was having during the cloning moments.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I did because I was running the game. I'm sure somebody somewhere picked that up. Yeah, that was fun. Uh, and it was nice to have character interaction that didn't involve me playing one of the characters that was actually interacting. So that's always fun.
It's true. It's a comforting thing when you see your players actually being characters in the story, and you're like, my main characters are characters now.
Nope, nope, that doesn't happen. That's not a thing.
No,
It's a lie.
no,
It's an illusion.
fake news.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. That was good. It derailed my plans because the conversation was like 30 minutes long, and then we didn't get to finish the fight that I was planning on. But it was good, so I'm not gonna complain about it. Other than my transition to tabletop simulator is not gonna be as smooth as it was going to be whatsoever. That's okay. I'll get over it. Maybe I'll spite Hyrath later in some
Ah,
fashion.
I mean,
We'll make it his fault instead.
I'm totally okay with that. It's fine.
So, uh, my highlight is introducing Bazak's new character. So,
Totally got prepared for this
yeah, it
introduction.
was great because it caught everybody off guard. So, it was really fun because me and him knew it was coming, and we knew how everyone was gonna react to it, and it was gonna be hilarious. And it was even better than I had dreamed because you ended up like out of your chair at one point. I think I couldn't see Eagle, but she seemed very amused and not able to focus, which was the goal. So if you haven't seen Bazak's new character, it was great. So he's playing a Salonian, and they're kind of like a Weasley type race. Drisik from the prison is this race. I
A
didn't do any.
fairy.
I didn't. I didn't do any special voices for her because switching back and forth between a bunch of voice effects is really tedious and annoying and didn't need to. But Bazak was having fun with the character concept. He's like, I am going to give him like the Alvin and the Chipmunk voice. And it's great. So I'm not sure if anybody's going to take him seriously. They should take him seriously because he's a very powerful character and he's important. But I don't know if anybody can take him seriously with the voice. And the players reacting to the surprise voice was just, it was great. And also how he photoshopped his picture really quick because people were making Mr. T jokes because that's how we referred to him at the beginning before we found out his name is Theodore. So then people were like, no mohawks. So then he gave his character picture a green mohawk just for the session, just to mess with people. And then I had it in time. And so that was done before they met him in the first hot place. So that was also entertaining. So if you want to listen to a bunch of people laughing hysterically at a chipmunk voice for like a solid 10 minutes, you should check out
Yeah,
last
and then
session.
you find out that my voice apparently turns into a chipmunk when I'm laughing.
And we found out that Barry is remarkably good at imitating the voice without any sort of equipment whatsoever.
Yeah, like that was weird. I was like, wow, he doesn't even need a voice synthesizer. He can be whatever he wants. Which makes me worried because I feel like he might use that voice for goblins or something later in my campaign, which I mean I won't be able to focus.
The goal is to make people off guard. So then, if no one can take him seriously, it's great. No, but I'm really happy because we haven't had like a comedic relief character that's not an NPC. And so even if he's totally being serious, he'll still be amusing. So even if things get dark, it'll be like, at least he sounds ridiculous as he's saying it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like when he was saying, like, I mean, every time he talked, because he was just so quiet the whole session, and then he'd talk, and he'd be like, "What?" Like when he's like, "Get off the furniture," I was like,
That was great.
"Oh,
That was a great
oh
line.
no!"
That was perfect. I was like, the eraser's just staring at him. It's like, don't stand on the furniture, please.
Please get off the
great.
furniture. And then he attacks, and he's like, "Ah!" in that little high pitched voice, and we're just like, I mean, that's terrifying, but also very hilarious.
Yes, so that's my highlight. My other highlight is we actually got to plot. Oh my goodness, it's exciting.
Yeah,
It's fun.
I enjoyed your take on the Verpine on the eraser. I liked how you were like trying to talk super fast and like couldn't quite catch up with yourself, and it was almost half robotic and bug-like at the same time, and it was very enjoyable to watch you try and keep up with this.
Yeah, I wanted to make him not Jim, but in the same vein as so he doesn't get distracted. But his brain is going so fast. Basically, he's got to catch up and make sure he covered what he was actually saying. So he's always like, he's so far ahead of what he's saying that he's got to make sure. Wait, did I cover all of that stuff that I was talking about? Did it all make sense? Because it made sense in my head, but I'm not sure if it translated to what I was saying. I was kind of plays into like the Verpine can communicate using radio waves too, and they kind of like a hive-ish thing. So he's dealing with people, and he's been alone by himself. So he's just like, he was really wanted to make sure everybody could follow what he was saying because what he was saying was important. But I didn't want him to just be like, and now we'll have a PowerPoint lecture slide on things I have found, which would have been like the monotone lecturer is the eraser.
No,
Everyone would have been so bored. So bored.
Well, I mean, I'm just happy because like my brain can rest easy now. I get where Alora's supposed to fit. It's a clone. It's not anything else. So like now I'm like, okay, this makes sense. I don't have this part of the story is resolved for me. I can now focus on the other things that are mysterious. But yeah, like for a long time it's been like, is she a clone? Is she a Ichani? Is she, I don't know, split between the dimensions? Like what is happening with this character? And now we know. Or we think we know. Which is good enough for me now. Do we know? I don't know. I don't know.
I'm not done with all my shenanigans yet. I haven't revealed the whole plot. That would be no fun. I revealed part of the plot.
You revealed the part that has been bugging me the most. I can deal with the rest of it, but this was the one quantifiable fact. I'm like, until we know this for certain, it's going to irritate me, and I won't be able to formulate anything, and I can't put this together. But now it's like, okay, now that I see it's okay, clones, got it. Moving on.
Yep, Clones. Everybody's favorite. I blame Kyrath for clones. So if you hated Attack of the Clones, just stop watching now because there's clones now. It's a thing. We have clones
Please
officially.
don't. We don't have enough people to not watch us anymore.
We've had clones since like the sixth session of Kyrath campaign, but it has been revealed that they were clones now instead of
That's
a
true.
lot of siblings that look identical. They're not identical twins or
No.
siblings. Nope.
Which is with
Clones.
the Ichani thing that I was thinking, because I was like, well, they could be Ichani, because I had introduced the Ichani into the campaign before with the gambler. He trained under the Ichani, and Takaya is Ichani, I believe, if I remember correctly. Or no, he's Ichani. One of them is Ichani. I forget which one, but
I thought Dakaya was. I don't even. I looked back trying to find more details on Dakaya, and
she's
there's
okay.
some, but she changed so much from what you originally intended her to be that like, you know, I was looking back. I was trying to find details on her. I was like, hmm.
There's a whole document
I mean,
about
there
them
is, but
being
there's not
him.
that much in there.
I feel like there is. Like
I
there was
don't.
plenty.
I mean, there's a lot, but I was looking for other stuff, but that's fine because if it's not written down, that means I get to make up my own stuff, and
That's true.
yeah, and I can do whatever I want. And this feeds in perfectly to our main topic, which is creating NPCs, because we have now gone on a tirade about all the different NPCs that we have in all of our games, which is perfect because we're talking about how we make NPCs.
We
So,
craft them
yes.
into what they are.
All right, Zari, what's your strategy for making NPCs?
Well, I mean, that's a loaded question. I have many strategies.
What's your go-to, you have to make an NPC in 30 minutes, go strategy?
Okay, well, that is a little easier to answer. I have three questions that I ask myself. It's something I borrowed from Matthew Mercer. It's what does the NPC want? What do they fear? And what do they value? Or the what do you value part that can vary depending, but it's essentially like why do they do what they do? So the what? So the first thing, and that's usually how I decide for a creature or character or whatever, the what do they want is usually pretty easy to answer because it's usually so like let's since we're talking about Takaya, let's use her. The first thing I thought was, what does she want? She wants to spy on this, village, and she wants to complete her mission so she can go home to her family. That's what she wants. The next thing, so then after that, then you just have to flush her out. So I was like, okay, well, what does she fear? Well, I mean, because everyone has fears, and we all, either unconsciously or consciously, we all act on those fears. So then her fear would be, well, she fears discovery. She fears failure because this will mean that her family will be punished, or she won't see the gambler again, and these are the things she wants. And then that leads into, what does she value? She values her family. And so even though it seems like everything, like both those three questions, I answer them the same way: family, family, family. There's different layers and reasons for why she does it. And so that feeds into, for at least a temporary 30-minute character, that's an easy way to keep their motivations clear. Because like if you I mean, because it can happen. I mean, like your brother found out with Dirk. You can have this random NPC. One of your players attaches to them, and then you're like, oh,
Sam.
I've give Sam, yeah, I've given them no motivations. What do I do with them? And so yeah, I find if you create these three questions and answer them somewhere, then you have a pretty clear idea, at least for the first couple of sessions, how they're going to behave, and then you can give them a longer, bigger backstory if they become a bigger deal. But that would be my, like, if specifically that, for that sort of scenario, that would be my strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to. I don't know. When I'm creating NPCs, it's for a story purpose. Unless someone's like, I go to this random place and do this random thing. I'm like, okay, now I need NPCs for them to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I kind of just wing it on the spot because then they don't have stats or anything. So you're just creating the character, not creating a skill sheet or anything else. You're just like, all right, we need a person, we need a name, species, like what they're gonna be like in about 3 seconds because we're about to switch over to this map and I need to cram for something. But if I'm creating something ahead of time, I'm planning for NPCs, so I'll just use the. Well, I have a lot of NPCs that I really like. and some of which the players didn't interact with at all. But I'll just use the prison at the amphitheater as my example of creating NPCs for now. So, the prison's got like a lot of cliched characters. So I don't know. My first step whenever I create NPCs is what's the point? Why are they there? Unless they're gonna be like that random NPC that shows up, like Dirk did, like randomly as Ajax was looking to be a bodyguard for somebody. You don't see it coming, and then it is weird after that. But I usually like to ask why they're there, what their purpose in the story is, or what's going on, and then I use the purpose for why they're there to try and decide. Okay, what would be fun? What would be fun, or either playing into the stereotypes of that role or playing out of the stereotypes of that role. Of how can we make the character interesting? It's like, is it funnier is it better if I play into the stereotypes of the character that they're playing, or do I completely subvert it and be like, well, this is totally different than what you were expecting? I really like making my semi not villainish characters be nicer than people expect, because then it makes it harder for people to be like, you're just bad. It's like, no, man, I'm friendly. Why can't we be friends? Um,
I just
so
have these small quirks that are maybe evil.
yeah, right. So when I was creating Tham, I was like, all right, so the prison needs there's clearly in this unlawful prison, there's somebody who can get stuff for people. And so I was like, okay, so there's going to be a smuggler type guy. And, a traditional smuggler is like somewhat outspoken, but not super outspoken. I don't think a Chagruda has ever been one of said characters, because they're usually humans who are, like Han Solo characters,
Right.
or someone else. I was like, you know what? We're gonna do like a really brightly colored alien that has ornamental headdress that you've only seen as like Jedi and occasional other people. And I just like the Chagruda, so I was like, we haven't used them yet. We're gonna throw one in here because we haven't really used them. Because you barely interacted with my police chief, who was a Chagruda, but that's a different story. And then I was like, okay, so he's got a lot of stuff. Well, why is he in the prison to begin with? Because that's always important. And I was like, well, he's a smuggler, so it makes sense if he's just skimming stuff off the top, and the exchange got mad at him. And all right, there we go, done. He's there. Now we know why he's there, and now we know why everybody puts up with him, because he can get everything for everybody else. So now he's just in the prison, trying not to die, but also making money off the top. So he's not really that invested in escaping, because he's kind of got a good gig going. Like, if he had the opportunity to escape, he'd take it. If he likes the people if he thinks the escape attempt's going to work, but you'd have to, or if circumstances work out. But he wasn't really, like meant to align with the PCs when they came in. It was mostly, he was there. If the PCs were friendly enough to him, he's going to be friendly to everybody who can give him money, basically. And so he's different than Drisic, who was meant to kind of be like their buddy to prevent them from getting killed in their sleep by like hundreds of prisoners. Because I was like, okay, so like this former like security officer and a Jedi end up in this prison that's a bunch of criminals who are so bad that they made a criminal organization angry at them. And they wouldn't die within like 3 seconds because why? I'm like, you know what? There's some feared person in here who's like proven themselves in the ring that also would feel drawn to them to protect them. Like, all right, that's Drizzy. There we go. Now I know why she's there. And I went from there. And I was like, you know what would be? And so I created a character that would be that kind of played up the skills I needed to be a fearsome gladiator in an arena, but not based on brute strength, based on evasion. It was just kind of like a different take on it. And I needed that, and I was like, you know what? We're gonna need a doctor in here in case people get hurt. So I'll create a doctor. And I'd be like, well, if the doctor ended up in a pit where everybody fights, he's either gonna be a mad scientist type doctor, or he's gonna be like some person who's just like, oh, and yep, another person got hurt fixing another person. So I kind of went that route. Well, I kind of want a combination, but making him someone who's older and just kind of like annoyed by things, just like by the young people running around doing crazy stuff. And then, of course, I just took Devil from Lex's backstory and kind of threw him in there as the main, because you got to have somebody who runs the prison on the inside of the prison. What better opportunity than to take a criminal from a backstory and throw them in there? And so, yeah, so I kind of decided, like, so the 4 NPCs that I created that weren't just generic people, that the players may or may not have interacted with, I was like, what's their role in the prison? Why are they there? And then I tried to figure out what race would be fun to put in this role, what kind of personality is fun, and then what kind of skills should I give him. Tham, I didn't really give much skills because he kind of just smuggles and bribes people off scenes. He doesn't need to make skill checks for those, so he's a low level character. He's only level 14 compared to everybody else, so he's not super powerful. He's just kind of there. He can shoot a blaster. He gets stuff for people. Drisik was a little bit more complicated. Devil, I needed to be at least a semi potentially intimidating threat, which didn't work out because natural 20s to the face tend to do that to characters. Uh, but who they were determined what their skills were going to be when I was creating the character sheets and their stats, because I was pretty certain that most of them were going to end up in a fight at some point. That's kind of how I went through that. And I don't know how well it turned out. But everybody likes Tham, but I think it's just the southern accent. I don't think people like Tham. I think people like the southern accent. Because nobody's ever even talked to Tham, really. Tham just shows up and he's like, can we do this, please? Because he just doesn't want to die. And everyone's like, Tham's great. And I was like, this was the surprise person. I was like, I just did a southern accent for fun. And his accent actually evolved during the session with this that didn't get recorded. That was just Barry and Eagle and me in the prison. It kind of was a southern accent, but then I just like fully embraced the southern accent. I wasn't sure people were like, wow, he's just doing a southern accent. Okay, that's fine. Why are you doing that? So I tried to make it something that was different, but then it just was like, it's way easier for me to just do a full-blown southern accent and be consistent with it, so we're just doing it. It's going to be fine. And apparently people have enjoyed it.
And see, like that's my other point too, is like with yeah, no, I think you're correct. I think that's the only reason why we like Tham. But it makes him memorable, and I think that it's an important thing to do. Even if you're not going to do an accent, you should always do some kind of quirk or something about them, especially if you want it to be an NPC that they care about. Then you should always introduce something about them that's either a little bit flawed or funny or interesting. For me, that character would be Tila. Like, I knew Tila needed to be important. I needed you guys to want to be around her, or at least, be drawn to her for some, remember her in some way. Because I have lots of plans for her, and you can even see through the things we've done. I mean, she's like the only quote unquote doctor. She's the potion shop. She's the magic shop. If you're gonna go to the magic shop, you probably need somebody who's, and then also with the investigation going on, I knew she was going to be the main person to help you guys, because you guys were going to be like, magic, we don't know nothing about magic. And so, that's where so for Tila, I was thinking, okay, this is who I want, but I don't really want, she's this high elf character. I don't really want her to be dignified and stoic, because that's like you said, the stereotype. And so what I thought was, what if I put the character from Fallout 4? Some of you, if you watch a stream, you'll see that there's a comparison of Piper. So I put her in there, and then kind of like you're saying, it kind of evolved from there, because in my head I had Piper, but then I liked how Kyrath played Curiosity, and I was like, I bet, what if I put some of that in there, because it'll draw curiosity to her. But also, I was like, she's lived for a while. Maybe she has decided, life's not worth being super serious about. So she's a little childish in the things she does. And so, like, the quirks I gave her was that she talks really fast, she gets distracted easily, but when she does get serious, like, it's worth listening to her, because she'll say something that's really super important. And if you miss it or not paying attention, it's like, wait, what? And but she's also impulsive, and so I've put these little quirks in her to make her a serious character, but also a memorable one, so that I like my favorite thing is the varied range of reactions to her, because you have people like Winter and Curiosity who are like, oh, let's go find Tila, let's go talk to her, and then you have Harmony and Gorm who are like, no, we have to go talk to Tila.
No, Harmony doesn't mind her. He's just like, there's too much stuff, and Curiosity always gets distracted.
It's true.
Other than that, it's fine. But yeah.
So yeah, no, and so I would say with I think it's important, as a little bit aside, but it relates. I think it's important to be goofy in front of your players, because a lot of the time you're spent playing this game, you're actively trying to kill them all. And I think at some point you need to give them that brevity to be like, look, I'm playing this game with you. I'm trying to help you guys have fun. I'm here to entertain you. So here's the funny, quirky side of me. Here's the funny aspects of me. Do a southern accent, even if it's not that great. They're still gonna think it's hilarious, you know. And yeah, I think, like you said, you just embrace being silly. I think that that's the biggest thing I would say when you create NPCs. Try and think of things that are they're gonna stick out, and then just accept it, do it, and don't feel any shame about it, because even if your players make fun of you, it's mostly because they're enjoying it so much that they're like, no, I mean, like when the first session I heard your voice, I was like, no, keep doing it. I want to talk to Tham now because I think that's hilarious, and it makes me laugh every time we go
It's
talk
coming
to
back
him.
as a PC, everybody. The Southern
And he's
accent's
coming.
coming back for the whole time. I've embraced that I live mostly in Nashville now.
It's not a bad thing to embrace. Nashville's pretty good. Well, Tennessee's pretty good.
Anyway,
Nashville,
no.
eh.
So, yeah. So having something that's quirky is good. Making villains that are memorable and also still threatening at the same time, you might not want to make them funny. But if you make them funny and then they do something
depends.
horrendous, then that's a good juxtaposition if you do it right.
Mhm.
Like if they're not just like laughing evilly, they're like laughing like and they're making jokes. That could be good. But
Mhm.
that also requires your PCs to have conversations with your villains, which usually doesn't happen. They usually just shoot them in the face. So I think the creativity comes when you're playing ally or potentially allied PC NPCs, because then you can throw out like the wizened old crazy guy. It's like, unless he's revealed as a villain later, then you don't get the
Mhm.
fun things as a villain. I got the benefit of being able to actually have player interactions with Devil, which was exciting, because he runs the prison and you can't just cross him because you're gonna end up dead. So you have to talk to him and work with him a little bit in order to get that. So those were a couple of fun interactions. Um,
I was very sad that I didn't get to have a player interaction with Devil, because the way, I mean, I really wanted to have like a conversation and stuff, and I kind of had hoped that by blocking the door he would be like, okay, well, I don't have time for this, and he'd find some other way out, and then we'd meet up later. That was my player hope for how things
and then he
would go.
pulls Kalani out as a hostage, and then that whole thing goes sideways just a little
Yeah,
bit.
and I was like, oh man,
He
we're gonna
had
do this
plans in case you
now.
guys wouldn't let him come with. He's not gonna take this laying down. Uh, no, but I don't. Enemies are harder for. I mean, because you got to create a bunch of NPCs that are meaningless, basically, and just grunt people.
Hmm.
But they should still have behaviors. So, are they gonna run away from a fight? Are they not? Are they like totally loyal to their cause? Are they gonna surrender once they're outnumbered? What kind of things they're gonna do? Um, and I think their position in the enemy's ranks also determines what kind of stats and abilities you're going to give them. So are they one of your boss characters? Are they like a lieutenant? Lieutenant should still be pretty tough, but not as bad as your boss character. Lieutenants probably shouldn't be able to take on the entire party single-handedly. Maybe like, but with some good henchmen, they could give the party a run for their money.
Hmm.
Boss should be able to take on everybody at once. So you got to have counters for your players' best stuff, so they actually have to work together. So you can't just have one player walk in and kill your boss in 3 seconds. Um,
It's
and
anticlimactic.
yes, so but the problem is if you have a bunch of enemies, you're kind of like looking at combat levels and you're like, I don't know, is this a balanced fight? I
Hmm.
finally get to talk about this thing. It's great. So we kind of had it in a back pocket if we ever went long, like short on time, which never happens on this. Um, but
Hmm.
Kyrath, during his campaign, developed an Excel sheet, which isn't super complicated. Basically, all you do is you put in the player character's stats. So you put in their attack, like their highest attack roll, and their highest, like their and the damage roll for that, like the average damage from that attack, and then you put in like for the Star Wars campaign, you have the separate attack for like their regular attacks, and then use the force attacks, and then you have damage that they can do, and then all of their defenses. So it takes an average of the players, and so it averages all of those out. So then you can see, okay, what's the average defense for my players, and then and then down low we've got it set up so it has like, sometimes it's really annoying. Kyrath Shadow at the beginning when none of your attacks can hit him whatsoever, and you're like, I can't hit him. This is dumb. So it has a like different levels of, okay, you want the players to be able to hit your enemies 100% of the time or 75% of the time and whatever, and so it breaks it down and it tells you exactly what each of their defenses needs to be. It's like, oh, their reflex defense needs to be this high. That means like on average, like your average player, this works less well if you have really disparate players. if your group is more balanced out, which it's getting because now Picaz isn't there, um, so it's more balanced now, so that's easier. Um, so then you can figure out, you're like, okay, so if, and then it tells you if they're fighting one on one, having this much health will make them last 10 rounds. So 10 rounds is a lot of rounds. So you'd be like, okay, I want something. If I'm planning on like two guys ganging up on one person, I need to like scale that back by like a factor of 4, and then they'll each last like 4 or 5 rounds. And so we do a bunch of math. Zeri doesn't do a bunch of math. I like a bunch of math to make things feel balanced, and so that it feels potentially lethal, but I'm fairly certain that it won't turn lethal on accident, because I really don't want that to happen, because then you end up with GM fudging and you're like, oh, this is way worse than I thought it was going to be. I haven't had that happen yet. I don't know if anybody's ever felt threatened in any of my scenarios, because I tend to throw a lot of bodies at people. But that's also a thing of they're near level 20. I want them to feel like they can actually take people down. It always
Mm-hmm.
bothers me when every single enemy always scales proportionally, you know.
It's true.
And so what I've taken to doing is giving them decent attack roll stats, but then just not giving them that much health, so they don't last very long. So if you hit them like a couple times, they're down. So you can take a couple of them out each round. So at the beginning, it could be potentially dangerous for your players, and as you whittle the numbers down, it gets less dangerous. But that kind of feeds into what I was going for. I want the players to feel like, hey, we can walk into scenarios and we can take out a lot of enemies and we'll be fine, except for cases where we really screw up something or we face an adversary that's actually tougher than we thought. Um, but that's kind of how I scale things. So then if you got a boss character with like minions, make the minions weaker. But I like having the math out there so I can make sure, okay, these stats are reasonable. The players are going to be able to hit the character, like my enemy. It's not going to be like, oh, once every 20 rolls, they're going to, like, unless they roll in that 20, they can't hit this character. Well, that's ridiculous. And the players are just going to get mad at you. And they're like, this is stupid. Like, there's no way for us to beat this character. He's just, like, throwing out damage. We can't even touch him. And so that helps you figure out, at least for me, it helps me figure out what my enemy NPCs, what my stats need to be for those. And yeah, that's what I do. That Zeri doesn't do that, but that's okay, because not everybody does a bunch of math behind the scenes.
Well, I know my strengths and weaknesses. Math is a weakness for me. Clearly, as I totally have had scenarios where it accidentally turned lethal, and I was like, whoops. Well, they're gonna have to figure this out because we're still doing the thing. I rely more on bestiaries. I look at the stats of a creature and I look at that and I base my villain on the stats. I read the thing that says minor, minor, mediocre, and major. I think are kind of the levels it has. And I will pick that and I will say, okay, so this is so for the Jello, the House of Jello. For the when you guys said it encountered that was like, that was not the best moment because I accidentally made it a little more powerful than I intended to. Um, but partly also I can't be fully blamed for it because you guys did not go as a full party. You kind of piecemealed your way in, and so that is not what I thought. I thought, oh, they're gonna want to go to this house and it'll be great, and they'll just go together. So
I plan for split parties at this point. Like, can they survive? Maybe attacks from the maybe.
no, they can't. It's just for the can't. So the Jello I made the Jello. It's I'm blanking on the name. That's why I'm calling it Jello. It's this thing. Uh, gelatinous cube. It says on the bottom. It's great. Uh, yeah. Gelatinous cube. The cube I had made. The What I had reasoned out was okay. So they're gonna go through the house. They're gonna fight the rats, and that'll do like it'll soften them up a little bit, but it won't do a major damage. And I think I was right about that. It didn't do anything major. It was a fun moment. We're chucking rats off the edge of things, or dash them to pieces against the wall. It was great. And then they got to the Jello, and the first thing they did is they stick their hand in the Jello, and I'm like,
I didn't do it. Wasn't me. Wasn't me.
I mean, this was all based on a meme where someone stick their hand on a Jello, so I was kind of happy that the meme came true.
And I mean, it was also like rolling. I think Olaf had rolled a mediocre perception roll, so it's like, oh, it's like a thing suspended in air. You don't see what it's
Mm-hmm.
hanging in. It's just like floating there. So he's like, oh, just reach out and grab it, and then he touches the solid, and he's like, oh, and then he just gets sucked in, and then I was like, oh, okay, yeah. So that was
Yeah,
situationally, but then when they split into like 1,000 pieces, and then the
and that
attacks
was
all started happening, it was like, we can't dodge enough of these attacks. This isn't gonna go well.
no, and that was the part that was I was what I thought. My GM thinking is, oh, they'll learn that as they attack it and whittle its health down. I mean, each piece had less health than the last, but there were more of it. I thought they'll learn that it breaks into pieces. They'll attack the piece that has the key, realize that they can't stay here forever, grab that key and leave. That's what I thought, because I was like, I was trying to communicate, this is not a win the battle scenario. This is complete the task.
And see if the
And
kid. But the problem was the kid was way behind everything, and so I
right, but
eventually tried to go grab him, but that took a while
that took a while.
because I didn't know that the kid was there for the first part of the fight because nobody told me the kid was there because Harmony didn't know
Yep.
the kid was there. He just saw a cube monster killing everybody. He's like, all right, we're killing the cube. All right, this is great. Killing the cube.
Kill a cube is yeah. So no, so because I don't do math, that's probably why that fight became much more deadly than I had expected it to. Kylar has also pointed out that that's also probably why the bandit attack has become
They just
so
have too
deadly.
high
Is because
to hit. Like the damage rolls are fine. It's just they have unless they roll all net ones, they guaranteed hit Harmony, and he's like the tank of the party, so that doesn't
yeah.
really fly. And they hit almost everybody else guaranteed too. The way that the math works out, it's fine. It's fine. We'll all survive hopefully with some shenanigans, but it's fine. That's why I like doing the math ahead of time, so I don't end up in those positions because then I feel bad. I feel bad for the GM and the players because I'm like, this is mathematically terrible, and the GM didn't intend it to be mathematically terrible, but I know
No,
math, so I know it's mathematically terrible, and me and Kyrath are back and forth messaging like, this is ridiculous, how are we supposed to win? And it's like,
because
you wasn't
Zeri doesn't
intending
do
it to be
math.
that way. And I was like, do I just like message there? I'm like, sorry, the math on this is terrible. It's like, I can't do that while the session's happening
No.
because that's just not right. Because then it's like, I will nitpick all of your math while we're going. Yes, no, I just try to win. And
Well,
then I'll
and
just be
it's
like,
obvious that I'm like, okay, whoops.
yeah,
I
I
did
feel
not.
like after like 3 rounds, you realize like, oh dang, I did something.
Yep.
And then my weaknesses lie not necessarily is more in the descriptive phase. I think definitely I don't describe as much as I could. I don't flesh out the world as much as you do a good job of describing fights and characters and scenery. And I'm just like, we're here and it's a cantina, so we're fine. It's a cantina and we're moving on. There we go, and we're gone, and we're to the next thing. And
Well,
so
because that's just how my brain is. I mean, like you say, oh, you do a great job of this. The reason I do this because I literally can see this. In my head, as I'm describing it, I'm describing what I see in my head. Make me sound crazy, but I know what this bar tastes like. I know what you're gonna smell. I know who's here and why they're here, and those are the things. So for me, when that's what I focus on. And also, I'm not arbitrary in what I do. It's not like I'm just like, you get 6 points and you get
no,
five, and
yeah, no,
I'm
obviously not.
judging on okay, well, last encounter they dealt with this pretty easily. I want these bandits, I want them to see, oh, these are like bandits. These aren't your run of the mill off that these people are smart and they're organized and they know what to do. So the fight I'm presenting is, you can survive this. You have to work together. And that's what I'm trying to present, forgetting that that is not always communicated in the first 3 rounds. And so I have to remember to try and ease in and probably rely on the stats more than I do, because I think what I tend to do is think, oh, well, I mean, he's only got 30 health. Like, they'll blow through that within the first couple of hits. Not thinking though, but I'm gonna put
I
12 of
think
them in
I'm the
there.
only one who has more than 30 health in the party.
Right. And so like that's the part where I'm like, so what I've started doing now is like, I go back to my players and I go back to their sheets and I look at their sheets and I'm like, okay, how can I make him a threat but underpowered versus this person? And maybe I just need to maybe we just need to consult each other and be like, okay, these are the stats, this is what I want to do. And then you could be like, how do I describe Kalani cuts another head off without it just being Kalani cuts another head off, and I can be like, well,
Yeah, I think it's like I think if I slowed down to take the time, I'd be able to describe things. But so often I'm just like combat takes forever. We're rolling through this, like,
hmm
and then I'm just like, oh, and yep, I didn't describe things again. Oh no, I did it again. Did it again, guys.
it's
Sorry,
fine.
you'll have just a boring. Oh look, you mowed down some more enemies thing. But the
I've
whole
just taken to compensating for you by describing my own actions. Like I do it this way and in an epic way. Hopefully, like you'll catch on, and but you don't, and you forget, and it's fine.
okay. When Roll20's not being spastic, I'm sure that I'll still do exactly the same thing that I've been doing because it's really hard to break habits.
It's very true.
Even if you're consciously trying to avoid it, you're like, nope, did it again, guys, did it again. I was good for like 2 minutes there, and then gone.
It's gone. It ain't coming
Um,
back.
yeah, so I mean, going with balancing combat is if you're making a lot of NPCs. I had a disagreement with Kyrath about this, about whether or not you have to abide by all the rules of character creation when you're making NPCs. I would say if you're creating a companion NPC who is like supposed to be balanced with the party and everything else, like sure you should probably build the character from the ground up. And but when they're near level 20, that takes a long time. If you're like level 2, you're like, okay, great, they get like 2 talents, and oh, look, there we go. We have a rules-based character that's totally fine. Because if you're not taking characters that already exist and then just modifying them, which I don't like to do because I like to balance my characters out for fun, for using math. And we have more players than 4, and the combat levels are based on if you have a party of 4, and that makes assumptions about the power level of your party of 4, and I prefer just to have the numbers. Anyway, um, I would I would say if you just are picking a couple interesting skills, you're like, oh, it'd be cool if they could do this combined with this, and not necessarily making sure that that would be possible.
Right.
Then I'd be like, you know what, fine. Like you're doing it for expediency at that point. You're like, all right, I need a tougher enemy than just this guy shoots a blaster. I need him to have a couple of cool things that he can do. All right, this looks cool. That looks cool. That looks a little bit interesting. There we go. Boom. What should his health be? Bam. Okay, there you go. You have your NPC. All figured out. His stats are done. But if you're creating like the boss and then you're like giving him some like insane, I give my bosses stat buffs, so some stats feed into how many force powers you can have, and Kyrath get mad. He's like, it's impossible to have that much because he's only level 20. I'm like, but you could throw level 20 bad guys at us when we were level 14, so it was an intimidating boss. If he's level 20, you're level 20, and all I do is increase his defenses and his health, he's not superior. He's just harder to hit and fight, but the outcome is going to be guaranteed because he's not actually stronger. He's just he's better able to hit you, and he can't do anything cool or interesting that the players can't do themselves. I don't want the bosses to feel like they're better than you. So
Right.
But I think if you make something that directly violates the possibilities of the rules, then you probably did something wrong. Like this is fit. Like, oh look, I have, like, if I had my Sith characters, while I would love to be able to use Sever Force on the PCs, it's a light side power. So if I had my Sith going around wielding that violates the rules. And so I'd say, you know what, do what you want within the realm of not ridiculousness. You can be like, oh, I give them this thing, but that would cancel out their ability to get this other thing, but I'm going to have them have both of them anyway. Because I think they do that for a reason, to have like genres of characters. So you want to stay in a genre, like you want to stay in a lane for characters, and then pick things. Or if you want to invent something, be very careful because you could accidentally end up with it being really broken. And it's like, wow, the players can't beat this, and I screwed up, but I can't fix it anymore because the battle already started, and they'll all know I cheated to make them win, and then they'll never trust they'll never believe that I'll ever kill them in a fight, and so there's no stress, there's no tension whatsoever in any of my fights, so I try to avoid that. Sometimes I make more bad guys show up because I'm like, wow, all right, this is easier than I thought. All right, I'll just throw a couple more minions in here. They rounded the corner. Oh, look at that, and now it's a fight again. So I prefer to have. That's why I like minions, because you can just have more minions show up. Like, look, and around the corner, there were more minions.
Oh no.
But I think if you're gonna not like, so when I'm creating my NPCs, I'm like following the general sense of the rules. I'm like, all right, I'm picking a bunch of dark side force powers and feats and things, and I didn't for sure check that all works out mathematically, but I'm like, you know what? They're level 20 plus. They're extra. They're more than level 20, so they can get extra stuff. It's fine because I'm trying to make them a boss character that's challenging, and so I don't necessarily care that there's not technically past level 20. I have now invented past level 20 because the character's at level 19, and
It's
it's
like
ridiculous.
World of Warcraft, just level question mark. Like, I mean, you don't know any level, but he's higher than you. That's
He's a level plus plus plus. He's got I've got a yeah. Kyrath got mad at me because I have a character now that has 48 force powers, which is he's never gonna use all of them in a fight. I just want him to have a lot of versatility and a higher bonus to his use the force check. And I was like, you know what? He's a Sith Lord. He can have as many force powers as I want him to have.
See,
Basically,
I
because I
would,
gave him too high of a stat, and then it gave him too many force
yeah.
powers, and Kyrath was like, "This is illegal," and I was like, "He's a boss character. I can do what I want."
Well, and the other thing too is even if you want them to have an ability that, let's say, for like the Star Wars campaign, well, technically is a light side ability, so you can't use it. You can always, I mean, you have to, I think you always have to remember that the rules are guidelines. They're not strict. This isn't a board game where you have to follow the rules because this is the game. The rules are there to facilitate a story. And I think you have to remember you're telling a story. So if you want your villain to have an ability like let's take Shiloh's ability to heal. If you want your villain to have an ability like that, but it has the light side moniker, so he technically can't use it. It's You're telling a story. It's really easy to just take the exact same stats because mathematically they'll work the same for either way, but you reinvent it. You say something like, well, he can heal himself, but in order to do that, what he has to take that energy from someone else. That makes it dark side. And it's the same principle mathematically. It works the same way. The only difference is that you're doing damage to another creature in order to take it. But that can be a useful thing to do. But I also agree with you. Like a lot of times especially when I create villains, and I'm talking about boss villains. I'm not talking about minions, obviously, because minions, like I said, I just followed the bestiary. I'm like, well, I'll pick these guys and these guys, and there we go. But for villains, I tend to build them. I tend to build them from scratch and go for the top. But even if I see, oh, like technically speaking, this won't work. The way I justify that is I do the same thing for my players. So I'll pull things that I want my villains to have because I'm like, I want my villain to be the god of lightning. So I gave him all the lightning powers, even though technically he can't have all of them. He can only have like 3 or 4. I just gave him all the lightning powers. He can do it. But the way I justify that is I do the same thing for my players. So I hand out talents and for magic and different things they can do as rewards. Like, oh, you like curiosity, for example. Technically he can't wear heavy armor or light armor or whatever he's wearing. But he's worked on it enough that I'm like, okay, with this set of armor, you can wear it and you don't get the penalties that would traditionally come with it. So I think if you find a way to kind of house rule, then it makes the players feel like it's more fair because it's like, I'm not just house ruling my villains, I house rule you guys too, and I give you guys things that you shouldn't be able to have either.
Yeah, yeah. Character creation is always a fuzzy topic, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because if you've got a lot of different NPCs, which I got a lot, there's a lot of different villains running around, and I was like, you know what? Some of them are just gonna shoot blasters, and some of them are gonna be able to do cooler stuff. Um, but I think just always keeping in mind that it shouldn't be so ludicrous that your players get mad at you.
True. And also shouldn't be so easy that they're like bored.
Just be like, oh yay, we hit combat. Kara said he was scared about this combat, which I was like, I don't understand how he's scared. He said he wasn't that scared in the amphitheater because he was just in the center thing the whole time. And I was like, but there were lots of monsters that could have gone very badly. I don't understand. Apparently, this being trapped in this one room is much scarier. Apparently, Kyreth is just claustrophobic,
Apparently.
even though he can
I mean
heal
my
like 70 health per turn. It's just ridiculous.
it is insane. I don't benefit from it, but it's great.
Bad for you because you're closer to the people cutting down the door.
Hmm. I got a new skill though. I think it'll help me out. But I with villains, the other thing too is I don't think I very rarely make a character and I say this is a villain. I actually don't like labeling my NPCs. I make NPCs. That's what I tend to do. I say, I need this character's doing this, these are their motivations. If they become a villain because, and sometimes, you can predict it. It's obvious, like, okay, all their morals align differently from this character's. Sarchus, for example, the slaver that you guys encountered. I was like, okay, they're not gonna be super chummy with this one. They're probably not gonna be like, no, there's a good reason to enslave people, sure. That's probably not gonna happen. But that doesn't mean that I then give him the label of villain, And I know how that sounds as a Christian to say, like, I just don't want to label people, even though he's probably pretty clearly evil. But what I mean by that more is if I as his controller, as his GM, don't view him as a villain or a good guy or whatever, it's easier for me to just play him as a person. And I think that's the more important part, because then, like how you were saying, like, you have to decide, well, whether your villain stays in a fight, does he run away? Well, it made it really easy for me to be like, no, this guy's not super brave. And so, like, in the beginning, he gives you this strong front, like, what are you doing, that kind of thing. And then when he realizes, oh crap, I am totally gonna die, then he breaks down in tears. He's like doing everything he can to beg for his miserable life. But I think that made him more believable. And I mean, it was a thing. I mean, of all my villains, you guys probably remember him the most because
I
you had
punched
a
him
whole
in the face because he was annoying.
right. And, like, that was great. I was like, they reacted to him. It was a thing. Even Vinda was like, I'm gonna stay here all night and I'm gonna watch him, even though I'm like, this guy, the only reason he's been able to do what he does is because he has money. But okay, sure.
He's super powerful. He's super dangerous.
Right. He could do anything at any moment.
Yeah, that seemed like an overreaction a little bit, but yeah.
But it was great. Yeah. I very much appreciated the reaction to him.
Yeah, I think I have used the moniker of villain so much is because my campaign has tried to tie a bunch of stuff together, and so that they were already, before I even created them, the plot demanded I needed things that were directly engaging with the players as adversaries. And so, and in the Star Wars, you're like, the Sith are probably the villains, most likely. Not all the time.
Then you meet
and it depends on what the players want too. So, and we got different types of Sith doing different things, and so they're not all working together. So I've got a couple different things going on with different Sith at the same time. So,
I guess the main point I would say is don't ever give your NPCs a label for your players. Let your players come up with their own labels. If you come up to them and basically say, I am the villain of this campaign, well, maybe the players will disagree with you. Maybe they'll say, but what you're doing makes a lot of sense. These people are stupid and I don't mind getting rid of them. I mean, that would be a really dark turn.
And then you run away and you kick all your players out and never play with them again. You're like,
right.
This got dark real fast. I don't like
real
this
fast.
No, it's like, all right, we're going to just kill everybody. Okay. So now the adversaries are the guards who are trying to stop you. And this is feeling like we switched sides here a little bit. We took the dark side route on this one a little bit.
Oops.
No.
But the other side of that too is that you might end up convincing an NPC to turn his ways, or maybe you find a middle ground, and then they're not a villain or an ally. They're like a neutral party. So, like, I just think I'm just trying to be really careful before I say anything like, no, this dude is obviously evil and you guys don't like him. Like, I think I would be loath to actually ever say that to people. I want my players to come up with their own conclusions for who people are, and so that's how I play my NPCs. So yeah, I think we've covered mostly what he and I both do as far as NPCs and what is important to keep in mind, both mathematically and story-wise. I think we can both agree that when you do both, there's a happy middle that makes for a good NPC, and villains, heroes, something in between. Those are important to have. Other than that, once again, like we always say, we have several shows open for you to watch. We have our Legends of the Force, which Kylar does an excellent job of jamming. We have the Fantasy Age campaign. Here's the Akana storyline, which is going to be very fun. Hopefully after the Christmas special, we will carry on to some more interesting things than Will Corn Be Saved. Depending on who you are, though, that could be interesting. And then also this Tuesday we will have another continuation of Fangs of the Moon, which is Kyrath and I's campaign with our lovely team of Barry. And also, as a reminder, this Friday we're having our Christmas special. It'll be dinosaurs. We will be playing ourselves. It's going to be messy, but it'll be fun. So we hope to see you all there. God bless and have a great rest of your day.